So we have already covered the graphical side of infinite limits. In this video and the couple of next, we will go over the algebraic side. As we have already seen in the graphical side, that there are two types of infinite limits. One is when x approaches a certain value and y approaches infinity, and the second one is when x approaches infinity and y approaches a certain value. Let's look at the algebraic questions for each. For the infinite limits, question would be something like this. Limit as x approaches 0 of x squared plus 3x plus 1 divided by x squared. In almost all scenarios, you will have a few options in front of you. As we can see the sign infinity in one of the options, we know that this question is from infinite limits. If we try substituting for x, we will simply get 0 squared plus 3 into 0 plus 1 divided by 0 squared, which is simply 1 divided by 0, and as 0 is in the denominator, we know that the limit does not exist and we cannot solve for it. In the question, it is only asking if it is reaching positive infinity or negative infinity. So for infinite limits, there's a special way of treating this question where we create a table to find if it is reaching positive infinity or negative infinity. So coming to the question, which of the following are true? Part A, limit as x approaches 0 from the positive side. If we see it from a graphical perspective, we'll see that at 0 we are talking about x values which are positive and they are reaching towards 0. So it can be like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and it is from the positive side. A negative side would be from this side. So in the question, we are talking about the positive side. So let's try substituting some of the positive values as x is reaching towards 0. Let's first try substituting for 3. So we'll have 9 plus 9 plus 2 divided by 9, which is 18, 20 divided by 9. 9 ones are 9, 9 twos are 18, and something above 2 point something. So let's say 2.2. You will soon realize that the exact values are not needed and we just need the estimates. So at 3, the value of y is 2.2. Now let's try substituting for 2. If we substitute for 2, we'll have 4 plus 6 plus 2 divided by 4, which is 12 divided by 4, which is simply 3. So at 2 we have the value 3. Now let's try substituting for 1. If I substitute for 1, I'll have 1 plus 3 plus 2 divided by 1, which is simply 6 divided by 1, which is 6. So at 1 we have 6. So you can see that as x is approaching towards 0, y is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So from a graphical perspective, as x is approaching 0, y is becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. So the graph would become something like this. So it is reaching positive infinity. So our part A is true. The same way we will solve other parts as well. Let's try solving another part. Part B, limit as x approaches 0 from the negative side. Is it reaching negative infinity or not? So from the negative side, we'll try substituting some of the values. So let's imagine that we substitute negative 3, then negative 2, then negative 1 as x is approaching 0 from the negative side. And the values come out to be negative 5, negative 8, negative 10. So we can see from the graphical perspective that as we are reaching negative 3, negative 2, negative 1, as we are reaching 0, our graph is getting negative and negative and negative. So it is reaching negative infinity. So our part B would also be true if these are the given numbers. Now the other type of question where x is approaching infinity of some equation. For such questions, our technique is simple. We simply look at the equation, and from the numerator we pick up the highest power. So highest power is 4x power 5, and from the denominator we pick up the highest power. The highest power is 8x power 5, and we simply ignore the rest. Then we try to simplify these high powers. So we have 4x power over 8x power 5. Now here we can simply cancel off x power 5 and x power 5, and we will get 4 divided by 8, which is simply 1 divided by 2. So 1 divided by 2 is your answer. So we'll say that as x is approaching infinity, y is approaching 1 over 2. Within this type, there are different type of questions. You can get a quotient, you can get a square root, you can get a trigonometric equation, or you can get a difference of equations. For this video, we will cover the infinite limits on the left, and for the next couple of videos, we'll go over each type of limits at infinity: quotient, square root, trigonometric equations, and difference of equations. So let's look at infinite limits in detail. Question 1. Limit as x approaches 0 of 3 over x. Question: which of the following are true? Limit as x approaches 0 from the positive side at positive infinity. There's an infinity sign in the question, so we know it's a question of infinity, and it is a question of infinite limits. So we will simply make the tables. So the first table will be for the positive side, x and y, and the second table will be for the negative side, x and y. So x from the positive sides would be 3, 2, 1. From the negative sides can be -3, -2, -1. This is 0 from the positive side and 0 from the negative side. So the value of y, let's see, let's try substituting for 3. If we substitute for 3, 3 divided by 3, we get 1, so this is 1. If we substitute for 2, we get 3 divided by 2, which is 1.5. If we substitute for 1, we get 3 divided by 1, which is 3. So as we are approaching 0, the values are getting greater, and if these are getting bigger and bigger, this means it is reaching positive infinity. Let's try the other one. From the negative side, if I substitute for -3, we have 3 divided by -3, which is -1, so I have -1 over here. If I substitute for -2, I have 3 divided by -2, which is -1.5, so -1.5. And if I substitute for -1, I have -3. So as I'm reaching closer and closer to 0 from the negative side, our values are becoming more and more negative, so it means we are reaching negative infinity. So at 0 from the positive side, we are reaching positive infinity, and 0 from the negative side, we are reaching negative infinity. So coming to the question again, which of the following are true? Limit as x approaches 0 from the positive side is positive infinity, true. Limit as x approaches 0 from the negative side is negative infinity, true. Limit as x approaches 0 from the positive side is equal to negative infinity, false. Why? Because we have seen that it is reaching positive infinity. Part D, limit as x approaches 0 from the negative side is reaching positive infinity, false. It is reaching negative infinity. Let's look at the other question. Always remember that the first step is simply to identify which topic the question is from. So once we have identified it is from limits, which type of limits? Infinite limits. Why? Because y is approaching infinity and not x. For any infinite limits, we always make a table. So let's make a table. One for the positive side and one for the negative side. Now it is reaching, the question is limit as x approaches 1 from of -4 divided by x minus 1. So 1 from the positive side. 1 from the positive side would be 4, 3, 2. And from 1, from the negative side, we can take -2, -1, and 0. Please make sure that these can be any values. It is just as we are approaching. So instead of -2, I could have written -1.5, -0.5, 0.5, or any other values. It just needs to get closer to that value. So let's try solving. If I substitute 4, I'll get -4 divided by 4 minus 1, which is simply -4 divided by 3, which is somewhere a little bit above 1. So let's say -1.3. So I get -1.3 over here. If I substitute for 3, I'll get -4 divided by 3 minus 1, which is -4 divided by 2, which is simply -2. So -2. If I substitute for 2, I'll get -4 divided by 2 minus 1, which is simply -4. So we can see that it is approaching positive infinity because the numbers are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Let's see +1 from the negative side. If I substitute for -2, I'll have -4 divided by -2, -1, which is -4 divided by -3, which is 4 divided by 3. So it is something 1.3. If I take -1, I'll get -4 divided by -1, -1, which is -4 divided by -2, which is simply 2. Now if I take 0, I will simply have -4 divided by -1, which is simply 4. So we see that from the negative side as well, it is reaching positive infinity because the numbers are becoming bigger as we get closer to 1 from the negative side. Let's look at the question now. Which of the following are true? Part A, limit as x approaches 1 from the positive side is reaching positive infinity. So 1 from the positive side is reaching positive infinity. Yes, this is true. Part B, limit as x approaches -1, no sorry, positive, I always confuse this. So make sure you don't confuse this. X approaches +1 from the negative side is reaching negative infinity. So 1 from the negative side is reaching positive infinity. So this is not true. Part C, limit as x approaches 1 from the positive side is negative infinity. This is not true because this was true. Limit as x approaches 1 from the negative side is positive infinity. So we saw here that this is true. For the last question, I've written this down along with the answers. I want you to try it out and see if you get the same answer or not.